In today's show, Donovan Clingan is set to miss at least a week with an ankle sprain, and we talk about the future of the Trail Blazers backcourt in the present. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we're going to talk about an injury update to Donovan Clingan and the future of the Trailblazers backcourt in light of Scoot Henderson playing the best game of his career, or certainly the very best game of his season, without a doubt. Let's start with the news, though. The Blazers released an update on rookie big man Donovan Clingan's injury, and it reads as follows. Yes, indeed, it did come in a PDF to my email. You know, if you're a longtime listener, shout out to my everydayers, you do not want to see a PDF in the old email inbox. And it reads, Trailblazer center Donovan Clingan was evaluated today after he left Tuesday night's game versus Brooklyn. It has been determined to be a mild left ankle sprain. Clingan will be reevaluated in 1 week and updates will be given as appropriate. That's your 2-sentence press release shared on a PDF, also copied in the body of the email if you're into it. Bummer, but not nearly as bad as maybe right away when Donovan Clingan was down on the floor that you thought it might have been. He was contesting a Noah Clowney drive with about 1:20 left in the game against the Brooklyn Nets, and he either landed on Clowney's foot or he tried not to land on Clowney's foot after going up to challenge the shots, and just came down on that left ankle. He had missed some time with a sprained knee in that same leg, and so it's like when he comes down and hurts the leg, it's like oh no, like that's bad news. And he was mad on the court, and as I mentioned yesterday. Show whenever you see an athlete get hurt and then get mad, it tends to be like, oh, that's bad. That's going to be bad news. Clingan is intense. No one likes to get hurt, so it's hard to judge the severity, but you knew he was hurt, right? It wasn't one of those things. But he popped up, he walked up, he was stayed down on the court for a little bit, got up under his own power, walked off the court and put weight on his leg. It was clearly not like catastrophic, but it was the degree to how bad it might be was unclear, and he was clearly upset as he left the courts. Chauncey Billups said afterwards that it was just an ankle injury, and indeed, here we are with what the Blazers are calling a mild ankle sprain in the press release. Strain and sprain are different things. So a week, what would that mean for Donovan Clingan? Well, the Blazers play this evening. You were listening to Thursday, January 16th program. The Blazers play the Clippers this evening, who just beat the Nets by 59 as I stopped recording this. The Nets, tough. Second night of a back-to-back. They hold all their dudes out. They lose by nearly 60, by 59. And in fact, they were down 60 late in the game. And they made a charge to not lose by 60. A little 5-point spurt at the end of the game to not lose by 64 points. So Thursday against Clippers, no Donovan Clingan. Then Saturday and Sunday, a couple games over the weekend against Houston and Chicago. And then the Blazers go on a road trip beginning on Tuesday, Miami, and then Orlando and Charlotte. That's Tuesday through Friday of next week. And then they're back for a long homestand. So 1 week from the day it was announced would be the middle of that road trip. It would be the 22nd of January, which would be Donovan Clingan would be at a minimum miss 4 games. I once remarked to someone who worked in the league that was like, well, they probably won't bring him back on the road. And they, this was a team employee for the local basketball team many, many years ago, though. And they said, we can bring him back whenever the bleep, bleep, bleep we want. Reminding me that you play basketball players when they're ready to play. This was during a much more competitive season, literally probably 8 years ago now. This was there's no reason that Donovan Clingan couldn't return for that road trip. Seems fairly unlikely he would come back on the first night of a back-to-back and play both of those games. So if I had to like circle one on the calendar based on what we know, I'd say the earliest he would probably come back is that Charlotte game on the 24th of January. That closes out a road trip. That's just my guess based on what we know now. Obviously, a reevaluation date is not a return date, but last time he returned pretty close to that reevaluation date with a knee injury. Hope he's back. Hope he's back and he plays. The bummer about this is just that he won't play. I think we're getting to the point in the season as we approach the midway point and beyond where it's like you just kind of you want to ramp up what you're asking of Clingan, right? It's like, how much can you play? Let's just try to get you on the court more. They've already committed to this, and I think it's the right way to do it, albeit a little bit clunky because the roster's a little bit clunky. It's just like it's either Clingan or Rob Williams each and every night. They're not going to play the 3 center thing. It's just no good. It's hard to play Clingan and Rob together off the bench. The Rob Williams and DeAndre Ayton minutes haven't been particularly fluid either. It's just like those 3 dudes are centers. It's hard to play multiple centers in the NBA, in the modern NBA. So they've gone away from it, which I like. But Rob has had some. He's sick now and he's listed as questionable for Thursday's game, and he's he's had some challenges just like staying in the court as recently, and obviously DeAndre Ayton's coming off like a super stinker against the Nets where he just like he was not a competitive basketball player. He's still going to play. It's just you want Clingan to be healthy, so the Blazers have to make tough decisions. It's all I want them to do. It's all I want in the world is for this team to have to face tough decisions and have the youngsters get on the court, right? It's like I want them to commit to the direction of the franchise or actively not commit to the direction of the franchise right in front of our eyes because it's the decisions that they make, right? Like to say, like, is there organizational alignment on what we're doing? No, there isn't. And I want to see it in front of us so we have to so we can call it what it is, right? In some ways, an injury allows for more of the same, which is kind of just like, hey, what's the plan? What's exactly the plan here? And I think that can be a little bit frustrating. But I don't think this means Duop Reath gets into the rotation. I think it's going to be Ayton and Rob Williams when he's healthy, and maybe a little bit of small ball with Jabari Walker, and maybe some Duop Reath here and there, depending on Rob's availability over the next week or so. Obviously, Duop would likely play a little, maybe, unless they go small, but maybe against the Clippers. But there's a chance they just run with Jabari as their backup center. And Walker just gets to play in the role he's probably most suited for, even despite his size. That's the news to know. I want to talk about the Blazers backcourt of the future, which also means we have to talk about the Blazers backcourt of the present. In light of Scoot Henderson dropping 39 on the Nets, what changes? The short answer is nothing. The long answer comes on the other side. Join me in the second segment. We'll talk about the future and what a big game doesn't mean. First, though, I want to talk about underwear, my underwear. SKIMS makes underwear for everybody. They have maybe classically been known for making more femme-style underwears, but guess what? They're making undergarments for all types of folks. Anyone who lives in your house can probably rock SKIMS. SKIMS was nice enough to send me over a couple pairs, and here's the most complimentary thing I can say about them. They're extremely comfortable when I put them on, and then I don't notice them. The worst thing that can happen to you when you are going about your day is being cognizant of your undergarments. Oh, if you are thinking or feeling about them or feeling them during your day-to-day life, something is not going great for those undergarments. Well, SKIMS, you're just not going to experience that. They're super duper comfy. They let you go about living so you can worry about more important things. You'll notice them when you put them on and say, hey, these feel great, and then you will stop noticing them immediately because they are just quality undergarments. They're lightweight materials. They feel amazing. It's almost like wearing nothing at all. Like I said, you won't notice them. You're going to love them. So go get yourself some. Shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and SKIMS stores and let them know we sent you after you place your order. Select podcasts in the survey and select my show in the drop-down menu that follows. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And they're going to get you set up for the NFL playoffs from the first whistle to the final drive. FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate. It's got a variety of bets to keep the game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or your favorite team's already gone home and you're just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. Let's talk about the Blazers backcourt of the present, the future, and whatever's in between those 2 points. Because right now, what is in between the present and the future is in some ways too well known, and others a complete unknown. Let's start here though. Scoot Henderson against the Brooklyn Nets went 13 of 18 from the floor and scored 39 points. And it was the first time this season that he's had like a nuclear game where it's just like, oh, whoa. Now, can you replicate a night where you hit 8 of 10 threes? Probably not, right? Like this wasn't a game where it was like, oh, he unlocked the secret code, right? But it was a night in which Scoot was the best player on the court. You know, and like they're in the game, they're down 5 at halftime because Scoot had 25 in the first half and Tumani had 19. But like they were, you know, he was hooping and they were vaguely in it. And then he cooled down a little bit to the tune of only 14 points in the second half. Still a pretty monster half if you think about it. Considering Scoot's current and career averages. Still a monster half by his standards and anyone. 28 in a game is a bunch. And like, you know, they lost. They lost because they didn't play any defense. They didn't play any defense. Offense wasn't the problem. You know, consider the context of the game and all of those things and the outlier shooting and all this. Sure. But that was the first game where it was like, oh my goodness, Scoot, I want to believe. In fact, a listener, Christian, sent an email that said, I don't want to overreact, but, and then Christian sent several more sentences that followed, which were listener Christian overreacting. And I sent Christian an email back and said, just enjoy it. Because I am old enough, and I bet Christian is too, but judging by his access to an email, to remember Scoot's prior outing in which he scored 3 points against the Miami Heat. Now, he had a pretty good game against the Mavs before that, but earlier this month, he had a scoreless night against the Pistons. Like, you don't have to go that far back in time to remember the valleys, even when you're standing on the peak. And that is to say that after Scoot's monster night, my vision for the Blazers' backcourt of the future has not changed even in the slightest. Nothing has changed. Nothing, not even one little bit. Nothing has changed. I haven't moved an inch. I'm still standing here where I was, thinking that if the Blazers are actually committed to letting Scoot Henderson be the point guard of the future, let's freaking see it. I think a couple of things are true about Scoot's situation. The Blazers have never really, after the first 5 games of his career when he was horrendous, to be clear, really given him the keys and said, you're the guy. No, at the end of last season when they shut everyone down, he got all those minutes, but that's very different, right? That's like a very clear part of the season where it's like, we don't care about this anymore. I'm talking like when they're trying to be competitive, pre-All-Star break, pre-trade deadline, not only give him the keys and let him be the guy, but also like make the moves that would be necessary to do the things you said you were going to do in the offseason, which is commit to building around Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot Henderson. What I'm talking about is they still have Anthony Simons on the team. It's weird. Is it wrong? That might be for you, dear listener, to decide. Because I think the truth about Scoot is he hasn't earned it. Has Scoot Henderson at any point in his career been better than Anthony Simons? Yes. Whatever. I'm recording this on Wednesday evening. So last night against the Brooklyn Nets, yes, that was the time that he was. And maybe a handful of singular games, singular quarters throughout the course of Scoot's 2.5 seasons in the NBA, or excuse me, 1.5 seasons in the NBA. But never. He's not as good as Anthony Simons, and there's a reasonable chance that he is never as good in his career as Anthony Simons is today. But I will quote the philosopher Felicia Snoop Peterson when I say deserve got nothing to do with it. And the end of that quote that I rarely share on the program is, it's his time, that's all. And that's how I feel about Scoot. He hasn't earned it. He certainly doesn't deserve it based on his production on the court. Anthony Simons is a better basketball player. And yet, my position on Scoot and the team has not changed, because you will recall that a year ago, as we approached the deadline in February of 2024, I was of the strong belief that the Blazers should explore trading their veterans, including Anthony Simons, agnostic of Scoot. Scoot was not a good rookie. And my position at the time was that that Anthony Simons had showed last season that he was not capable of being a 1A top tier option on a high level offense. He just proved that he wasn't. And nothing about this season has changed. Although Anthony Simons has been very, very good in January. I am trying not to be susceptible to recency bias in either direction. Ant has been really stinking good in January and was not good at all against the Brooklyn Nets. It happens. And you could maybe say the reverse for the other point guardy type player on the team. But my position last year was that Anthony Simons is not good enough to get you to the other side, to be the starting point guard on the next great Blazer team, or even the next Blazer team that wins 49 games, right? He's not that. And the further you get into walking towards where he is, contract extension eligible, which he is, or he enters free agency and you say like, well, he's still our best option, and you kind of walk yourself into paying diet caffeine-free CJ McCollum, you are boxing yourself in with a very familiar feeling of committing to the guys you have and not being willing to move on from them. Also at the time, my logic was that Anthony Simons was a tradable and intriguing piece that you could get players back for, and you're allowed to trade for guards. So it's like you're allowed to trade for veterans, you're allowed to trade for guards. You don't have to sacrifice this position, right? It's a different type of thing. Is there a different type of player that could allow you either to improve or, moreover, to end some of the confusion with the direction and add some clarity to where you're headed? Would this improve you in the medium term? No. Would it improve you in the short term? No. But the Blazers' goals heading into this season are to be bad again and chase another lottery pick. So making that move at the last trade deadline would have maybe accomplished the goals, because maybe you get a worse player back from Anthony Simons, or a player who doesn't fit, or whatever it might be. I'm not advocating necessarily for them to take a bad trade, right? Like, that's actually, I'll share this more in a moment. Like, I think getting some of these deals wrong could be also detrimental in its own way. But here's what I think. Even after Scoot had that great game, my position hasn't changed. They still should have made this move agnostic of Scoot's production. They should still trade Anthony Simons agnostic of Scoot's production. You may feel differently. Great. You are entitled to your own opinion. My personal opinion has not changed. And my personal opinion, even after a Scoot big night, has not changed. I'm trying not to overreact. But instead, I get to talk into a microphone for 8 minutes. Here's the other thing. There are some very small minute and perhaps noisy indicators that suggest that Scoot Henderson is helpful, and maybe even the most helpful of the point guards to the Blazers offense. Let's talk about that and why the Blazers might not be interested in the trades that are available because of the position they find themselves in. Join me in the third segment. That's what we'll do to close the show. Before we get there, though, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. And with Robinhood Gold, you can enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%, plus you also get 4% APY on your cash in non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold memberships is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Still a pass versus point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. I'm a little wary to smash out lineup data, although I find it interesting. I'm even warier to smash out two-man lineup pairings, even though I find it interesting. So I'm going to offer you some numbers that I think you should take with a grain of salt. When Scoot Henderson plays next to Shaedon Sharpe, Toumani Camara, Deni Avdija, and DeAndre Ayton, that Blazers lineup has a net rating of plus 6.6. They've played just 83 possessions together, according to Cleaning the Glass, a minuscule number, a tiny little number. But they've been pretty good. When that same group plays with Anthony Simons, so Sharpe, 2, Deni, DA, they've been outscored by 1.4 points per 100 possessions, according to Cleaning the Glass. What I really learned poking around in the Blazers lineup data is that Jeremy Grant has been bad, and he has been a negative. And when you share your minutes with Jeremy Grant, things look bad. But if you just look at the starting lineups, Ant with the starters, Scoot with the starters. Ant's played 250 possessions. Scoot's played 83. The Blazers are better when Scoot is in there. That's not a meaningful enough sample to take anything away, but if you're going to be fooled, it feels better to be fooled by good numbers than bad ones. If you look at just on-off with the Blazers offense, the Blazers offense is 2.2 points per 100 possessions. So it's normalized, like basically they're 2.2 points better per 100 possessions with Scoot on versus when Scoot's off. Meaning, all told, the Blazers' offense is better with Scoot on the court than when he's on the bench. So on-off stuff's pretty noisy. I'm not 100% sure that it is useful data at this point in the season. But I say that to say this. There are some small sample indicators that suggest that Scoot is helpful. My eyeballs, and I think anyone who's willing to be rational about this, and to my irrational listeners, thank you for listening. But anyone who's able to be rational about this, Ant has been better than Scoot Henderson. Ant's been a better basketball player this year than Scoot Henderson. Even if Ant stunk to begin the year, right? His highs have been higher, and he has been better more consistently than Scoot has. Undeniable. I mean, I think you can point to this stuff and draw your own conclusions. I'm a little wary of those numbers, but I will say this. It doesn't totally match up with the eyeball test. Stats aren't supposed to match up. They're supposed to offer context to what we're seeing and help us better understand the game. I think the sort of understanding the game part with these numbers is that Scoot plays differently than Anthony Simons. He passes the ball much more freely, like he looks to do that. Can't score on his own at all. at the level that Ant can, but he passes the ball more freely, and I think he keeps the other four players connected a little bit better than Anthony Simons does, and just in terms of ball movements and dribble penetration and those types of things. Because when Ant dribbles towards the rim, he typically shoots it. Although I will say Anthony Simons has continued to make strides as a passer this year and pretty much every single season of his career, undoubtedly, because Anthony Simons is a better basketball player than Scoot Henderson. But I remain agnostic to trading Anthony Simons. Anthony Simons should be traded regardless. I am agnostic to Scoot or Shaedon Sharpe's progress in that. Some folks, I think the logic was, and I held this logic at some point, but I've changed my mind, and I've been steady on this for probably about a year now. Is that like, oh well, you can't trade Ant till Scoot's ready? That is a mistake, and that is misreading what this team needs. They don't need to be kind of okay to get somewhere. They need to commit to the path and get to the next thing, and they have held on to these veterans and not gotten to the next thing. What are they going to be? One of the worst teams in the league last season and also this season? Okay, they've checked that box. They've been able to do that, and they have sort of veterans who are clearly short timers still on the roster on this medium timeline. And why I'm agnostic to trading Anthony Simons regardless of Scoot is because what the Blazers need is talent. They need talent. And if Scoot isn't the answer, if Scoot isn't the guy who gets them there, well, Anthony Simons isn't going to be either. And the longer you hold on to him or if you pay him, you don't actually solve a problem. You create a problem independent of Scoot and specific to the Blazers and Anthony Simons, and like independent of the problems that Scoot not being good enough will also cause you. The decisions can be independent of one another despite being very obviously linked, right? The Blazers need more talent. That's what they're missing, is talent. They have actually a stable of intriguing role players, right? But the higher level talent, whether Shaedon Sharpe develops into that or that comes from somewhere else, and I think there's some debate over what like Sharpe's ultimate ceiling is, right? But he's clearly not like one of the 7 best players of all time or something. So adding more talent would be extremely important. If Shaedon Sharpe is one of the best players of all time, which again, I think probably pretty unlikely, adding more talent, incredibly important, right? The problem is the Blazers have waited long enough, and the guys that they have in tow, the veterans that they have that are tradable realistically, are not the type of players that can bring back the high-level talent that's going to change the immediate outcome for this team. DeAndre Ayton's essentially untradeable. Jeremy Grant is having a horrendous season and is out with, he's not going to play in Thursday's game. He's out with this jaw injury. And when he was playing, is having one of the worst seasons of his career. He's can't score this season. Cannot score inside the arc. That's, he's already paid a bunch of money and he's having a down year. That is not a highly coveted trade piece. Even if you say that this year doesn't matter and teams feel like they can salvage him, the money matters. And they probably both matter a little bit. Sort of pick how much you want them to both matter. Anthony Simons is not an archetype that has been in high demand. These sort of combo guards, scorers that aren't quite point guards that can't defend. This is not a high demand archetype across the league. That has been true for, all of the sort of Scoot era in Portland, is that even when you're trying to trade Anthony Simons, there's not going to be high demand for him. He's going to have a narrow group of suitors, and even they aren't going to necessarily pay up the sort of fat price that gets you the future all-star. You might luck into it somehow. That's sometimes a trade you don't see it coming, or maybe we don't see it coming and then front offices do. But most likely what a trade would be is a decluttering trade. You'd be decluttering the roster. You'd be saying, okay, Scoot Henderson isn't very good, but he's only played this season 42% of his minutes with Shaedon Sharpe. Well, that's absurd for where the Blazers are as a franchise. He should play at least 58% of his minutes should come next to Shaedon Sharpe. That duo has been okay together in not enough minutes to be meaningful. Not enough minutes to say, oh yeah, it works, because you need 500 minutes together, according to Kevin Pelton of ESPN, for two-man duos to be meaningful, and they just haven't touched that quite yet. They have not played enough minutes for us to know anything. It's just too darn noisy. There's some positive indicators, but I think that they've played 350 minutes together, if you're curious. But like the number I'm more concerned about is only 42% of Scoot's minutes have come with Shaedon Sharpe. Commit to the plan, see what you have. They should have done this last February. They absolutely should have done this in July. They should do this now. The problem is that when you do it now, it's not a trade for like big, juicy, and intriguing assets. It's a decluttering trade. You're decluttering the roster and maybe adding some players that theoretically fit, or you're taking a flyer on a young player like the Cam Reddish mold or something like that, or you're getting back like a kind of unappealing late first round pick in the 2028 draft, and you're like, what is that? How does that help us? And so I can see from the Blazers front office perspective that when they do scour the trade market, when they do make calls, they say, we're just not getting back anything that matters. We feel like we don't want to take a bad trade. And what we hear, the sort of viewing public is like, we feel we can be patient because the Blazers know they can be bad. At least in the short term, they know this year they can be bad, and they can say, okay, we got it, we'll get it right in July. And there's probably not even that much pressure for them to win next season, right? Like they have maybe the poison and luxury of time in some ways. There's got to be a point at some point where they try to win basketball games, but like they've dug themselves further enough down the path and held on to veterans a little bit too long, such that I think you can tell the big boss, we're not quite there yet. And that can be a reasonable and honest truth to Blazers ownership. We need more cracks at it. So with Scoot's big night, nothing changes. My position from February of last year is still my position in January of 2025. The Blazers should trade Anthony Simons, agnostic of the production of Scoot Henderson. We just have a little more indicators that Scoot Henderson is kind of helpful to the plan. But what we don't have is enough clear and concrete evidence that he's actually helpful. And there is also a very real chance that Scoot sucks. That's harsh, right? And I'm kind of laughing because of how harsh it is. But that should not matter. There are some positive indicators. Go see if those positive indicators continue into the future by committing to the plan. A plan this front office didn't commit to last trade deadline when they basically did nothing, didn't commit to in July when they ran back 13 players, and are unlikely to commit to now because the trades that are going to be available to them are not particularly appealing returns, and they just look like decluttering a roster that they probably don't feel needs to be decluttered based on the fact that they have so much damn clutter on the roster. My hope is that they commit to the plan. Not that the plan is going to work, but when the GM says we are committed to building around Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe, I hope that in the next 3 weeks, that phrase that was unprompted but said to us, what's the plan here? It was prompted. What's the plan here? And Joe Cronin said those two names. Those are the people we want to build around. When he said that, and it still hadn't kind of happened, you hope that it would at some point. We're 3 weeks out from the trade deadline. Let's see it happen. And in light of not trying to overreact to a big night from Scoot Henderson, just don't. Because that doesn't matter in the big picture plan. Those are my thoughts. That's what we do. 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. Blazers play the Clippers tomorrow night. Clippers on the second night of a back-to-back. No Kawhi Leonard. Clippers just won by 60, and they didn't have to play their dudes very much, so it's not as challenging a back-to-back, but they're still going to travel and land in Portland late at night and all of that. So the Blazers will be on a rest advantage with no Donovan Clingan and no Jeremy Grant. Come back for tomorrow's show. We will close out the week in Friday's program talking about that game and anything and everything you need to know. It's what we do. Tell your friends about the program. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.